Walz just wrapped up his speech at the DNC. He was introduced by his neighbor. He always talks about neighbors taking care of neighbors and Midwestern values. And this guy, who's also his former student and happened to live next door, said Tim Walz is the kind of guy who seems like he would push you out of a snowbank. And I know this because Tim Walz has pushed me out of a snowbank. He talked about how he went to school with a kid who was struggling to afford lunch and accumulated a lot of debt. And that Walz and his wife Gwen decided to pay it off. This is before he was governor. This is when he was a teacher at the school. So he did this, paying for kids' lunch, as a teacher. He carried on that as governor and passed the school lunch policy there in Minnesota. So being introduced by the neighbor was just such a special thing and a special moment. And I think it spoke to the fact that Walz's character is not an act or a show. And his neighbor said, we've always talked about how we want someone like this to run for public office someday. And we actually got that in Tim Walz. So that's very special. It was a beautiful moment. A lot of us knew Walz was a football coach. It turns out he was also a track coach, and he won a state title for that too. But in talking about all of this and exposing this information I didn't know before, they bring out the football team that won a state title under Tim Walz. I think it's amazing that they all still like this guy enough to show up on a big stage with a political lean at the Democratic National Convention for their old football coach. They talked about how he's the type of leader that believed in us and made us believe in ourselves and each other, and that leadership continues to impact their lives, which made me tear up a little bit, to be honest. They also played an ad, and we heard from Tim Walz's wife on his record that he became the sponsor of the Gay Straight Alliance Club because he knew it would matter as a veteran and a football coach to be the leader of that club. She talked about how he's a lifetime gun owner, but when he saw the country impacted by school shootings, he decided to pass red flag laws and support background checks. And I'm a gun owner, I support gun rights, and I think those are the two laws that I definitely support that don't restrict our access in a way that threatens our constitutional rights. So I really appreciate that. They showed videos of him hunting and pheasant hunting, which is very difficult, apparently, I'm told by people who do hunting in the Midwest, that it takes a lot of skill.
In Minnesota, we respect our neighbors and the personal choices they make. And even if we wouldn't make those same choices for ourselves, we've got a golden rule. Mind your own damn business. And that includes IVF and fertility treatments. And this is personal for Gwen and I. If you've never experienced the hell that is infertility, I guarantee you know somebody who has. And I can remember praying each night for a phone call. The pit in your stomach when the phone would ring, and the absolute agony when we heard the treatments hadn't worked. It took Gwen and I years, but we had access to fertility treatments. And when our daughter was born, we named her Hope.
I thought the introduction was potentially going to be too good and make this speech comparatively uneventful. And this is a speech that he gave after Oprah Winfrey, Bill Clinton, and Pete Buttigieg. So tough acts to follow. The intro was fantastic, but the speech was very good as well. He talked about the recent attack from J.D. Vance around whether he had his child Hope through IVF or IUI, and his response was, mind your damn business, a phrase he said a lot. A lot of people feel that way. No one wants to talk about the process by which they conceived a child and have that scrutinized in public. I think that's a very popular message. He did echo the message of weirdness as well. Take a look.
If these guys get back in the White House, they'll start jacking up the costs on the middle class. They'll repeal the Affordable Care Act. They'll gut Social Security and Medicare. And they will ban abortion across this country with or without Congress. Here's the thing. It's an agenda nobody asked for. It's an agenda that serves nobody except the richest and the most extreme amongst us. And it's an agenda that does nothing for our neighbors in need. Is it weird? Absolutely. Absolutely.
And when J.D. Vance is obsessing over how Walz's child was conceived, Walz was on stage tonight talking about how important family is to him and how important having access to this healthcare is to him and how it's a fundamental freedom to have access to IVF, IUI, or whatever fertility treatments you need to conceive a child. And as he's talking about how important his family is to him, his son is crying and clapping in the audience, which was a very special moment. He continued on to talk about the election as if he's a football coach in a locker room. He talked about how every single door knock, every phone call, every $5 donation is how we're going to win this, almost laying it out as if it's a game plan. And he finished the speech with probably the strongest remarks of the entire night of speeches at the DNC, and there were many.
That's how we'll keep moving forward. That's how we'll turn the page on Donald Trump. That's how we'll build a country where workers come first. Healthcare and housing are human rights. And the government stays the hell out of your bedroom.
He said that's how we're going to keep moving forward and how we're going to turn the page is by having this grassroots political movement. He said this is how we're going to turn the page from Trump and have a country where workers are put first. I did not think it was possible that within the next 4 years I would hear those words at a Democratic convention. He talked about housing and healthcare being a human right. We only heard Bernie Sanders say things to that effect just 5 years ago. He talked about keeping the government out of your bedroom. And so talking about what's important, the bread and butter issues, working people earning a living and covering their basic necessities, and framing the focus of the right now as an infringement on your freedoms, your privacy, and your business. And so it was a fantastic speech, a very emotional speech that pulled at your heartstrings. And while all of that is good and well, right now there are people protesting the DNC because they have family members who have been killed. People have lost their entire bloodlines, and they've been told that they don't have a spot to speak at the DNC after being in negotiations with the Harris campaign. I just talked to them. They're camping out outside until they hear that that has changed and they will have a seat at the table. And so Walz is talking about neighbors taking care of neighbors. A lot of people are worried about how good of a neighbor Israel really is and how the United States has given weapons to Israel endlessly that has allowed for this assault on Gaza. And so while we can be very happy that Walz is this guy who seemingly is going to be a great vice president and deliver for the working people here, a lot of us are worried about what our impact is in the Middle East right now. And so it's almost a bittersweet moment for people who care about the working class, but also who have solidarity with the Palestinian people and care about what US dollars go on to do abroad.